as time flies by, you'll open up your eyes wide. You feel it's gonna go your way. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day. Hey, 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 it's a brand new day.
We're going to talk about something now that's not the happiest subject, but unfortunately it's something that we will not be able to get away from one time or another, hopefully long time in the future. But Charmain, our British consul, would like to talk to us about death, because if you do pass away in a foreign country, there are obviously lots of steps, hoops, all kinds of things to go through when you are least capable of coping, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Charmain, a difficult subject, but something I know that from the British Embassy you want us to be aware of.
It is a difficult subject, but it is, I mean, deaths are one of the cases that we get involved with. And I mean, lots of people know that we help out with emergency travel documents or hospitalisations, but actually death is one of the saddest things that we have to deal with. And I suppose my message to people would be that there are ways in which you can make it a lot easier for your loved ones who are left, who have to actually deal with the death. So this is probably more aimed at residents than tourists, because as we've agreed, all of our tourists are coming insured. So it's all going to be really straightforward. It's going to be dealt with by the insurance company. So, I mean, maybe it's helpful if I could kind of talk through what happens. So in Spain, if there is a death, what will happen is you know, somebody phones the police, and the people that will turn up will be the on-duty funeral directors. And the on-duty funeral director will take the body.
That's from the Spanish police
yeah,
here, the
yeah.
normal police.
It's just that, so the family don't have to organise this. This is organised automatically. Yeah.
092, by the way, is the number to ring our local police force.
There you go. So the duty funeral directors will take over. Now, if you have, and you'll be taken to the morgue. If you have a funeral plan, basically you will have instructed your own funeral directors, and they would get involved at that stage. But let me just go through what happens if you've made no arrangements. So
that means you don't have a will, or that's separate?
No, will's separate, yeah. But this is no funeral arrangement, no funeral plan. So you're taken by the on-duty funeral directors, and this hasn't happened in a hospital, so there's automatically going to be an autopsy. This will be considered a judicial death. Yeah, so that means that it's dealt with by a judge, it's dealt with by a court, and the first thing that they have to do is determine the cause of death. So there'll be an autopsy. Normally, it's not going to be anything, you know, it's not going to be anything untoward, we hope. It's going to be straightforwardly a heart attack or a stroke or whatever. If it's not, and if there's any doubt, then it's referred on for further tests, and those further tests are normally like toxicology. And the interesting thing is there are only 2 places in Spain that will do those, and I think one of them's in Barcelona and the other's in Sevilla. Yeah? So that can slow things down. But let's go back to the assumption that it's what I'm calling a straightforward death. Excuse me, because death is never straightforward for those of us that are left behind. So the results have come through, and we know why the person has died. And the judge will then say, okay, I'm now releasing the body. Yeah, and the body is released back to the funeral directors. If that person nobody knows who that person was, the funeral directors will contact us at the consulate to try and find out, can you identify this person's next of kin? Yeah. So what do you think we would do in terms of trying to find somebody's next of kin? We probably do the same as everybody else does. We have a few more resources, but we use directory inquiries. We use telephone directories. Can we find out where this person last lived? You know, does anybody know of any family if they were back in the UK? Do any neighbours know where they came from?
Would this be simplified if they were registered with, was we talking more residents, if they were registered with the British consul when they get here, or does that
it's
not
interesting,
really
but that no longer happens. We used to run a system called Locate, and we used to ask people to register with us whenever they, but then people never updated it once they'd moved. So we don't keep that anymore. But what we do have access to, which does the same thing really, is we have access to a passport database. So if you've got here, presumably you've got here on a passport, and within that database will be the details that you gave at that time, which would be where you lived in the UK whenever you applied for it, and we would have records of previous passports that you'd had issued, and so we would be able generally to kind of have a good stab at where we should start to look. The other thing that is very helpful, and not everybody does this, remember at the back of your passport there are two
contacts.
Exactly. Incredibly helpful if you fill those out, yeah? Because more often than not, people's passports will be in their home, the police will have found their passports, and if we can just go to the next of kin page, it makes life so much easier. So that's a takeaway. Put your next of kin, or they don't even have to be your next of kin. I think the name of it might have changed now. It's just who you'd like us to contact.
Someone who knows where to find you if necessary, or how to help.
And who they should be getting in touch with. So we go back, so we've done all of this, we've done this exhaustive search, we still haven't found any next of kin. Or sometimes we find the next of kin, and the next of kin don't want to know. Yeah?
That's actually kind of frequent, I'm finding out, when people live abroad, that they have these separations or arguments, the family split up, so ever get repaired because they're abroad, and that's upsetting but very true.
Mum and Dad haven't been in touch with us for 10 years, or we're estranged from them. Dad went off and remarried somebody else and we never got on with them, so we don't have any contact with them. So it's not unusual for the next of kin to say, yes, I am the next of kin, but you can't rely on me don't depend on me to sort out the funeral costs because I haven't got the money for it, yeah? And so I'm not doing it. What we would do in those circumstances, we ask them to send us a formal letter that says that, and then we give that to the funeral director. The funeral director then goes back to the town hall where the deceased was empadronado.
Hopefully.
Very important for you to be empadronado, yeah? And the town hall will then, it falls to them basically to carry out a municipal burial.
Hey, hey.
Free taxi 4 times a month and 25% discount on your car insurance if you're the Zero Hero.
Yeah, I'm here in Marbella, but it says here I'm in La Canada.
If you haven't mastered the lingo, don't worry. Linear Director has a free GPS geolocator service that will come and find you.
Hello, and I'm here back to talk to you about the Zero Hero program sponsored by Linea Directa. The Zero Hero program offers free soft drinks to all designated drivers that enter their business, so that's restaurants and bars, and there's many different restaurants and bars along the coast that are already part of this program, so do make sure, if you do own a business, to try be part of it. I'm going to list you some here that I have on my phone. The Boardwalk, for example, in Puerto Banús has part of it. We have the Lineker Group, which includes Tibu, Babylonia, Portside. We have the Harbour, which I'm standing right in front of, which is recently part of it, and I think they've done a wonderful choice with that. Beckett's, The Playwright, Que Padre, Ambrosia, there's lots and lots of businesses. So if you're with Linea Directa, please do visit these places and get your free soft drinks if you are the designated driver. And if you are a business, why not? You know, you have nothing to lose with this program. It's wonderful, it promotes road safety, and it's a great thing.
I understand why the town hall gets so upset when people aren't on the town register.
And they
because there are so many things they end up footing the bill for.
Absolutely.
Whether it's just walking the streets, picking up the rubbish, keeping us safe, and then if you die and you're not on the town register, getting nothing from them, and having to
bury them.
and having to.
So quite often, and I'm not going to name and shame, but there are some town halls that will just go ahead and do it, yeah, and they'll just do a municipal burial. People need to be aware that if there is a municipal burial, the town hall are not obliged to tell the next of kin when this burial is going to take place or where it's going to take place, because you've said, I don't take responsibility for this person. So it is at the town hall's discretion.
And whether they might not even have a recognisable grave that you can go
Exactly.
visit.
The only thing that they're obliged to do is keep a record of what they did with the person's remains. But it's down to the town hall. You can't then sort of say, oh, but they never wanted to be cremated, they wanted to be buried. No. It's whatever the town hall chooses to do, and if a cremation's better for them, that's what they'll do, and if a burial's better for them, that's what they'll do. So you have to realise that if you've not made any plans, what happens to you
You get in the system.
is nothing to do with your wishes, yeah? Some town halls take a very long time to decide that they're going to bury the person, and it is not unheard of for people to be 2 years in the morgue whilst the town hall argues over who's going to pay for it. Yeah.
Wow.
So, which just brings me to the point of saying, if whether you're planning or not to die here, if you've decided that this is your home and that you want to see out your days here, in addition to the things that we would all naturally do, like make a will, yeah. Please think about what your funeral arrangements are going to be, because you don't want to leave that for your loved ones to have to deal with. There's a lot of shock, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of upset already around the time of the
Well,
death.
we went through this. My father was so organised in everything, and yet he didn't have that organised. And I said, we didn't even know who to ring. We didn't know where to start. It was just soul destroying, to be honest with you.
And it can be incredibly expensive for people. If you can take out plans, I'm not here to sell any particular funeral director, but there are lots of them, you know, go along, and some of them are the jolliest people as well. Go along, speak to them, make your arrangements. You can, you know, a lot of them will allow you to pay in instalments, lots of them will allow, neighbours of ours, I know that the company that they took their plan out with covered them if they moved back to the UK as well, because why would you want to pay into a plan if you then 5 years later go back to the UK and you know you're never going to be able to use this plan? So think about it a little bit. If I have time, the other thing that I would just like to mention are wills. Spanish law is very different from English law, and English law and Scottish law, of course, are two different things. But what people perhaps don't necessarily know is that you can make your will, if you're English, if you're Scottish, you can make your will in Spain under English or Scottish law.
Oh, really?
Yes. So things that you can't do in Spain, like disinherit your children entirely, I'm not recommending it. But if, for instance, there are reasons for you wanting to split up your will in unusual ways, you can do that, because if you're allowed to do it under English law and you're English, you can do
Even
your will.
after Brexit, which we'll be talking about later on?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Brexit. In fact, I think it's a European Union directive. But if you are a foreign national, you can make your will in Spain under the law of the country that you're a national of.
On that subject, just quickly before we finish on this subject, talking about going back to the UK, that maybe you can take plans over and doing well. If you do die abroad and you have a loving family in the UK and they want to take back someone to bury them in the UK, they would obviously have to do that through the embassy if you want to then transport a dead body.
Funeral directors are incredibly helpful on this, and there are funeral directors and then there are international funeral directors. And actually, if you're wanting to transport a body, because quite often, and this happens quite a lot, especially with people that die whilst they're on holiday, obviously their family don't want them to be buried here, they want to take them back to the UK. There are options, there are things that people could do. You could have a body cremated and then have the remains taken back, which is obviously a lot more cost effective than having a coffin with a person taken back. But it's generally done through international funeral directors. So your funeral director here will use an international funeral director who is in contact with a funeral director in the UK, and there is paperwork that has to be done, because unbelievably it has to go through, you have to have permission from Sanidad to take a body, because it's a dead body, out of one jurisdiction and into another. But it happens, and you can do it. It's incredibly expensive. Another reason why, if you're on holiday, make sure you've taken out your travel insurance that will cover that. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff, not the jolliest of subjects, but certainly something that we all need to face sooner or later.
Yeah.
And why not sooner? And then hopefully you don't need it too much later, but better be prepared, especially for the loved ones. They're the ones who suffer otherwise if we're not prepared.
Exactly.
And great to have the British consul beside us, because obviously they are there to help us and hold our hands through it, although not to do it for us, but certainly to make it that much easier. Charmain, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.